All right, so get this. Just imagine being told that the key to happiness, the real key, isn't about, luck or riches or any of that stuff, but it's about something you already have, something we all possess, your thoughts.
Really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. And that's the radical idea that we're going to be diving into today, and it's inspired by, well, none other than Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of him.
But he was also a philosopher, a deep thinker.
A pretty unique combination. I mean, ruling an empire and finding the time to ponder, the meaning of life.
Seriously. It's amazing. And his wisdom from, get this, almost 2,000 years ago, it's still so relevant today.
Timeless, really.
Exactly. One of his most famous quotes, and we'll probably be coming back to this, is, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts."
Quality of thoughts. I like that.
Yeah, so what does that actually mean for us, today, in the 21st century? That's what we're going to try to unpack.
Because it's a statement that, well, it might seem simple at first, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, everyone's heard about thinking positive, right? Positive vibes and all that. But when you look closer, it raises a lot of questions like, what did he mean by quality thoughts?
Good point. And if our happiness really does depend on our thinking, then what can we actually do about it? How much control do we actually have? That's the big question.
The million-dollar question.
So we're not just doing a surface level, like positive vibes only kind of thing here.
No. We're going deeper.
Much deeper. We're going deep into Aurelius's actual philosophy.
Right. Back to the source.
How it connects or doesn't to modern psychology.
Always interesting to see those connections.
And most importantly, we're going to find out if there's anything practical, anything we can use in our own lives that we can take away from all this.
Because that's what matters, right? How can this ancient wisdom actually help us today?
Exactly. So to understand this whole idea, this power of thought idea, we need to go back to the source. We need to go back to Aurelius' own writings, his meditations.
Meditations. Such a powerful work.
And here's the thing. These weren't meant to be some, self-help bestseller.
No, not at all.
They were his personal reflections on how to live a good life. And they were written while he was dealing with, well, everything you can imagine an emperor would deal with. War, plague, you name it.
It puts things into perspective, right? This wasn't just some guy, sitting on a mountaintop, detached from reality.
Yeah, he was in the thick of it, which makes his insights even more compelling, don't you think?
Absolutely. And throughout meditations, this theme just keeps coming up again and again. It's the idea that, yeah, we can't control everything that happens to us, but we can control our reactions, our judgments, and ultimately our thoughts about those things.
Okay, that makes sense. But come on, like our brains are wired to focus on the negative stuff, right? Isn't that the whole the negativity bias thing that psychologists talk about?
Yeah, the negativity bias, it's a real thing.
So how much control do we really have over our thoughts if our brains are basically working against us?
It's a valid point. And it's something that Aurelius was aware of, too.
He was.
Oh, yeah, long before modern psychology. He knew about this tendency towards negativity. And in fact, he had a pretty unique perspective on emotions like anger and fear and even sadness.
Really? So he didn't see them as, inherently bad or anything, especially given his role, right, as an emperor. You'd think he'd have to, cultivate some of those emotions.
Well, that's the thing. He didn't see those emotions as inherently bad. He saw them as natural responses, like they're part of being human, but they're also responses that could be examined, understood, and ultimately guided by reason.
Okay, so it's not about denying or suppressing those emotions.
Right. It's more about recognizing them and then choosing how you want to respond.
Interesting. So that's where this idea of quality thoughts comes in.
Exactly. For Aurelius, it's not just about thinking positive thoughts for the sake of, feeling good. It's about aligning your thoughts with reason, with virtue, with what he called the good.
The good. Okay, so what exactly did he mean by that?
Think of it as living in accordance with nature, both our own human nature and the nature of the universe. It involves recognizing that we're all part of this interconnected web, that our actions have consequences, and that striving for wisdom, justice, courage, self-control,
All the good stuff.
all the good stuff, that's what ultimately leads to a fulfilling life.
Wow. That's pretty deep. But it also sounds a bit, I don't know, daunting.
Daunting.
Yeah. Like, how do you even begin to put that into practice? Was Aurelius just preaching this, from on high, or did he have any actual, techniques for changing your thoughts?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. Because he wasn't just a philosopher spouting these abstract ideas. He developed very specific practices, some of which might sound surprisingly familiar to us today. For example, he was a big proponent of what we would now call mindfulness.
Wait, mindfulness, like meditation and all that, that's straight out of ancient Rome.
Oh yeah, way before it became a Silicon Valley buzzword. Aurelius would practice this throughout the day. Just pausing, taking a moment to observe his thoughts, question them, see if they were actually true, if they were beneficial.
So it's like catching yourself in the act before those thoughts, take over and dictate your whole mood.
Precisely. And he also used this technique called negative visualization, which might sound kind of counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but it was all about mentally preparing yourself for setbacks, for the inevitable challenges that life throws your way.
Okay, so how does that work?
Well, he believed that by imagining the worst that could happen, you could actually diminish its power over you, develop a more resilient mindset.
Interesting. So it's almost like a mental vaccine, You expose yourself to the bad thought germ in small doses, so you're better equipped to handle it if it actually hits you.
That's a great way to put it. And I think that's something that really distinguishes Stoicism from a lot of modern self-help approaches. It's not about pretending everything is perfect or denying difficult emotions.
It's about facing them head on.
Exactly. Using reason and perspective to navigate those emotions more effectively.
Okay, so we've got this idea of quality thoughts being aligned with reason, with virtue, with the
Right.
good, all those, lofty concepts. And we've got mindfulness, negative visualizations starting to sound pretty practical. But how did Aurelius actually connect all this to happiness? Like, where's the link?
Well, remember that quote we started with about the happiness of your life depending on the quality of your thoughts.
Yeah, I remember.
For Aurelius, happiness wasn't about, fleeting pleasures or achievements. It was about inner peace, a sense of purpose, and living in alignment with what he believed was our true nature.
So it's almost like happiness is a byproduct of living a virtuous life, of cultivating those quality thoughts. It's not the goal in itself, but something that naturally flows from it.
Exactly. And I think that's a crucial distinction. It's not about chasing happiness like some external reward. It's about focusing on living well, making wise choices, tending to your inner garden, so to speak.
I like that. Tending to your inner garden.
And in doing so, you cultivate a deeper, more sustainable sense of contentment
Hmm.
and fulfillment.
Okay, so we're starting to see the connection between thoughts, virtue, and this deeper kind of happiness that Aurelius was talking about. But how much of this is just, ancient philosophy? And how much can we actually apply to our modern lives? I mean, things were a lot different back then.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And that's what we'll be exploring. Because while some aspects of Stoicism might seem a bit, rigid or outdated for today's world,
Yeah, I can see that.
there are some surprisingly relevant, even radical ideas that have the potential to change how we think about happiness and how we live our lives. And that's what we're really here to discuss.
Okay, I'm definitely intrigued. So, for those of us who aren't, Roman emperors grappling with existential questions,
Right, for the everyday person.
how do we start putting this quality of thought thing into practice? What are some concrete takeaways, things we can use in our daily lives?
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. But that's exactly where we're headed next. Get ready to discover how Aurelius's ideas about controlling our thoughts and aligning them with virtue can actually help us navigate the chaos of the modern world.
The modern world, yeah, we could all use a little help with that.
And maybe, just maybe, cultivate that deep, lasting happiness he talked about.
Sounds like a plan. Stay tuned, folks, because this deep dive is about to get very interesting and maybe even life-changing.
Mm.
Okay, so we've established that Marcus Aurelius, yeah, he was onto something with this whole quality of thought thing. But let's get down to, like the practical stuff, the brass tacks. How can we actually apply his wisdom to our own lives, especially in this this crazy, chaotic world we live in?
That's a great question. A really great question. And I think one of the most powerful things, the most powerful aspects of Stoicism is its emphasis on what Aurelius called the dichotomy of control.
The dichotomy of control. Whoa, that sounds pretty intense.
Intense.
Yeah, a little bit. Break it down for me. Like, what does that even mean?
It's actually pretty simple, really. It's just the idea that, there are things in life we can control and things we can't.
Okay, that makes sense.
So we can control our thoughts, our judgments, our actions,
Right.
but we can't control the weather, the traffic, other people's opinions, A lot of what life throws our way.
Okay, yeah, so far so good. I mean, I'm definitely not in charge of everything, that's for sure. But how does this dichotomy thing, how does it help us with our thoughts? With, cultivating that inner peace that Aurelius talked about.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. You see, the Stoics believed that a lot of our suffering, a lot of our stress and anxiety, it comes from focusing on the things that we can't control.
Oh, I see. So we get anxious about the future, we dwell on the past,
Exactly. We get frustrated when things don't go our way.
and it's all just wasted energy, right? According to Aurelius.
Wasted energy because we're spinning our wheels, on things that we can't actually change.
So the key to happiness, or at least to, reducing some of that unnecessary suffering, it lies in shifting our focus to what we can control.
You got it. Our own responses. That's what we have power over.
Okay, so instead of stressing out about like that upcoming presentation I have to give, I should focus on, preparing as best as I can and then like letting go of the outcome.
Exactly. Let go of what you can't control. And, here's another powerful idea from Aurelius that can really help with that. He believed in, well, constantly reminding himself of the impermanence of everything,
Impermanence. So meaning,
meaning that nothing lasts forever. The good and the bad.
yeah.
Success is fleeting. Failures are temporary. Even our own lives, they're finite.
Okay, that does sound a bit dark. I get it though. Like if you're always reminding yourself that everything changes, then it takes the sting out of the bad stuff. But it also, it keeps you from getting too attached to the good stuff.
You got it. By recognizing, really recognizing, that everything is temporary, well, you can appreciate the good without clinging to it and endure the bad without being, completely consumed by it.
So it's about finding that balance, that what's the word, equanimity in the face of, life's ups and downs. Yeah, I'm starting to see how this all ties together, but gotta be honest, it all still feels a bit, I don't know, abstract. Did Aurelius have any like concrete examples of how he actually put this stuff into practice?
Absolutely. In fact, in Meditations, he talks about this practice that he called objective representation. And basically, it's about taking a step back from a situation, whatever's happening, and just describing it.
Describing it.
Yeah, but in the most neutral, objective way possible. No judgment, no drama.
Okay, I think I need an example. Paint me a picture here.
All right, let's say you spill coffee all over yourself
Oh, I've done that.
right before an important meeting.
Hmm.
So instead of going into a full-blown meltdown, thinking, this is a disaster, I look like an idiot, my day is ruined,
Yeah, that's usually my go-to.
you could use objective representation.
So I'd be like, okay, there's a liquid on my clothing. It's causing a stain. I need to clean it up.
Exactly, you're just stating the facts.
Mm-hmm.
Stripping away all the emotional drama and judgments.
Yeah.
And it might seem like a small shift.
A small shift.
Yeah, but it can have a profound impact on how you experience the situation.
Because you're not letting the story you're telling yourself, you're not letting that take over. It's like, okay, yeah, this happened, but it doesn't mean, the world is ending.
Right.
Yeah.
And, this is where we start to see the connection between Stoicism and, well, some modern therapeutic approaches, like cognitive behavioral therapy.
CBT.
Yeah, CBT.
Yeah.
It focuses on identifying and challenging those negative thought patterns, right?
Mhm.
And it's surprisingly similar to what Aurelius was advocating for almost 2,000 years ago.
Wow. So he was really ahead of his time. Okay, this is starting to click for me. But let's get even more practical here. For, the average person listening, what are some things, some concrete things they can do like today to start putting these Stoic principles, into practice?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because that's exactly where we're headed next. We're going to explore some specific techniques, some exercises, all inspired by Aurelius that you can start using right now to shift your thinking, cultivate resilience, and maybe, just maybe, find a little more peace and happiness along the way.
Sounds like a plan. Stay with us, folks, as we continue to unpack the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius and discover how his ancient philosophy can help us live better lives in the modern world. Okay, so we've been exploring some of Marcus Aurelius's big ideas, right? The dichotomy of control, the impermanence of everything, objective representation, all that good stuff.
It's a lot to take in.
It is, but it's, starting to make sense.
It connects.
But I think our listeners are ready for like the how-to part of this whole thing.
The practical application.
Yeah, exactly. How can we actually, put these Stoic principles into practice in our own lives? I mean, our daily lives, the day-to-day stuff.
Well, I think one of the most accessible and powerful techniques that Aurelius used, that he talks about, is journaling. It might seem simple, but
Journaling, like Dear Diary.
Not quite, no. He wasn't writing for an audience. He was writing for himself to examine his thoughts, work through challenges, remind himself of his values.
So it's more about having that space for, inner reflection, like a conversation with yourself.
Exactly. And, you don't have to be a philosopher or a great writer or anything to benefit from this. It's just about creating a dialogue with yourself, a space where you can be totally honest,
Yeah.
vulnerable even.
And no one's going to judge you.
No judgment.
Yeah.
Just you and the page. And you can use journaling to practice, that objective representation we talked about. Describe a situation that's bothering you, but without all the emotional baggage. Or you can explore your thoughts and feelings around those things you can and can't control.
So it's like taking those thoughts that are just like swirling around in your head and putting them down on paper so you can actually, see them, examine them, maybe even detach from them a bit.
That's it. And, another technique that Aurelius used all the time was what we might call perspective shifting. Whenever he was feeling overwhelmed, stressed out,
Like we all do.
he would remind himself of his place in the grand scheme of things.
Zoom out a bit, get a wider lens on the situation.
Exactly. He would think about, like, the vastness of the universe,
Yeah.
the countless generations that came before him, and the fact that his own problems, in the grand scheme of things, well, they were pretty small.
Yeah, it's like that saying, don't sweat the small stuff, and it's all small stuff.
Exactly. But it's one thing to, say it. It's another to actually feel it.
So how do you actually make that shift? Did Aurelius have any, tips for that?
He did. He often used visualization techniques. Like just imagine you're having a terrible day, everything's going wrong. Aurelius might suggest, close your eyes and picture yourself floating in space, looking down at Earth.
Oh. Whoa.
And from that vantage point, well, your problems probably seem pretty tiny.
I can see that. It's
Yeah.
like putting things into perspective, literally. Okay, so we've got journaling, perspective shifting. Anything else we can add to our Stoic toolkit?
One more, and I think this one is really relevant for, the world we live in today. It's what I call curating your inputs.
Curating your inputs.
Aurelius lived in a time of, well, constant upheaval and drama, just like us. He was bombarded with information, rumors, opinions, all that stuff. And he realized that not all of it was worth paying attention to.
This is where it gets real, right? I mean, the social media, the news cycle, it never ends. We are constantly bombarded with information. And a lot of it, let's be honest, it's negative, anxiety-provoking, and frankly, not that important.
You're telling me. And I think Aurelius would urge us to be, well, more picky, more discerning about what we allow into our minds.
So less doom scrolling.
Exactly. Be more selective about what we watch, what we read, maybe even take a break from, social media altogether.
A digital detox.
If it's bringing you down, yeah. Because our attention is precious. Why waste it on stuff that doesn't serve us, that makes us feel anxious, that distracts us from, the things that really matter?
This is such a powerful message, and it's so timely. I mean, think about it. A Roman emperor dealing with his own set of problems was thinking about these same things almost 2,000 years ago. That's incredible.
It really is. And it just goes to show that these principles, they're timeless. They tap into something, fundamental about being human, our desire for happiness, our need for meaning, and that ability to choose how we respond to, well, to all the challenges that life throws at us.
So to wrap things up, if there was one thing, just one key takeaway that our listeners could walk away with from this whole deep dive, this exploration of Marcus Aurelius, what would it be?
I think it would be this. You have more power than you realize.
More power.
You can't control everything that happens, but you can control your thoughts, your reactions, and ultimately how you experience the world.
So much of it is our perception.
Exactly. It's all about perspective. And by cultivating that inner awareness, that ability to step back and choose our responses, well, we can find a deeper kind of happiness. A happiness that doesn't depend on, external stuff.
Stuff we can't control.
Right. And that's a message we all need to hear. So as we navigate this crazy, chaotic world, let's remember the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius. Let's choose our thoughts wisely, focus on what we can control, and strive to live in alignment with our values.
Beautifully said. And who knows, maybe in doing so, we might just find that happiness we're all looking for.
Maybe we will. It's worth a shot, right?
It definitely is. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the world of Marcus Aurelius. It's been enlightening.
It's been a pleasure to be here.
And for our listeners out there, remember, the journey towards a more fulfilling, more meaningful life, it starts with a single thought. Choose wisely, folks. Choose wisely.